Good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to Back of the Shelf, the show which shows a little love to the games some people try to forget. Allow me to introduce my friends and co-hosts. David, say howdy.
Howdy.
And Gerald, in your cowboy outfit, say rootin' tootin'.
Rootin' tootin'.
Well done, Gerald.
Thank you.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate Gerald's
cosplay?
He just got dressed up. Yeah, cosplay, I guess.
This standard kind of streaming podcast wear, no?
Is Tuesday night James Bond night, Gerald?
Well, it is indeed.
Do you think this is what they used to wear for YouTube streaming in the 40s?
Thank you. I'm glad you like my outfit.
How are we, gents? How's our week been?
Dave, how's yours?
Yeah, okay, thank you. A bit quiet, actually.
Yeah.
I haven't played any games since we last recorded. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, otherwise fine, thanks. I like the little "we'll get to that in a second" thing. I like leaving people constantly guessing so they keep watching.
Why can't we get to it now?
Oh, okay, we can get to that if we want. I just didn't know if we were doing that segment. Let me just put that up. Yeah. My week.
So when I say what have we been playing? Oh, did I say what have you been playing?
You said how was your week?
It's the same thing. I don't really care about your personal life.
That's fair enough. Actually, completely fair. I don't want to talk about that. I haven't been playing any board games. I've only been playing video games recently. And I'm going to bring this up because I've had this for a few weeks. I've been playing Hades a lot, and it's quite fantastic. In fact, possibly one of the best video games I've ever played. So that's great. Other than that, just
what?
Completely irrelevant, but thanks very much, David. Well done.
I just wanted people
Gerald, what board games?
Talk about Hades.
Oh, the board games, this board gaming podcast. Yes, board games. I've been playing, I played one heck of a session of Memoir 44.
Good for you.
No, it was really good. It wasn't even with Dave. It was with our mutual friend, Scott. Shout out to Scott. Kind of reintroducing that to him because the only time he had played that before was kind of team play with Dave and Dave. McTav, end of the show. And so we got balls deep into the scenarios. And I think I can't remember what number scenario we got up to. It was like number 6 or something. So that was jolly good fun. Haven't played Memoir in quite a long time. That's the extent of my board gaming this week, Ben. How about you?
Actually, I thought I hadn't done anything at all, but I've actually counted them up. I've actually done loads. It's brilliant.
25 games.
I played The King is Dead.
Lovely. What do you think?
A game that
delicious, isn't it?
I was actually going to crack it out for 4-player, and I messaged you guys and say 3 or 4, and David said 3. Yeah. And I didn't. It was only when I was reading the rules I saw what that 4th player did to it. Oh, what is that about? So happily, the 4th guy didn't come, so it was 3 players. Oh.
Just like when I didn't turn up for Memoir night.
Yeah. Oh, so good playing a Memoir player.
So that is fantastic.
Lovely.
Was that second or first edition you're playing?
I have the first edition.
Oh, okay. Oh, lovely. Is that the one Graham was talking about? Fenithrow Graham, Benford Board Club.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
Second edition looks nice.
Is it different?
Only slightly.
Slight reskin, like very slight. And you don't have the French, I don't think, in the first edition. Where you have like invasion.
I think what Graham told us is you have something else. The same thing but different name.
Oh yeah, there you go. Slight differences.
Brittany, I think Brittany Invaders or something like that.
No idea. There you go. Okay, so played that, and then played Panam, which is very nice game.
Oh, I know
very nice. It's so this is now the second or third time I think I've played it. Really nice game.
Nice.
I've heard it's good. Yeah, we've talked about this before, haven't we? Yeah, I'd like to play that.
I think so. Yeah, it's not really unknown. I think more and more people are picking it up, but it's really tight game. I really like it.
Nice,
really good. And then I played the Camping in the Rain game.
How's that game?
That's a slight delay on the podcast. Turns out Canadians don't just go home when it rains. They stay. Yeah. They see it as some sort of challenge. And it wasn't camping in the rain, just not great fun. but they erected some sort of circus tent with a couple of tarpaulins and a bit of rope, and so we played Coloretto and Deep Sea Adventure.
Nice.
Great
Classic
games.
Camping in the Rain
Great
games.
Yeah.
I misunderstood when you said Canadians don't just go home, they stay. I thought you meant she not only went home, but she didn't come back again for the remainder of the weekend. Rather than she refused to go home. I got it.
They were all Canadians. I was coming with all Canadians.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, how was that? Okay, so it's raining pretty heavily. So we're going home, right? Nope.
Wow.
Get the tarpaulin out.
Yes. Yeah, so actually, shocking amount of games, really. So, yeah, done pretty well.
Nice.
Great. Well. Okay, thanks for that. Anyway, so moving swiftly on.
Let's talk about Hades more.
No time for that. Today,
Move on.
We're going to continue to do something a little different and do a list. Everyone loves a list, don't they, Gerald?
Yes.
Everyone loves a list.
Everyone
Before we get to that, a little razzle dazzle. So, David, title card, please. David.
Yes.
Why am I in every single one of these?
Your game.
It's just down to me.
It's because I've only got about 3 photos. So there's one of me, one of you, and one of Jerry. And your face, you just look so happy. It's just an absolute joy pasting your face into
it fits so perfectly.
And it does. To be fair, you look
so well.
You look with the hair of the picture and your beard. You look like a Stone Age man.
I do have a very square head, which I assume is easy for the old.
Yeah, I always use the rectangle tool to cut your face.
Oh, very good. Right. Bravo, Dave. Bravo.
Thank you.
Tonight's game is called Year What. It's kind of similar to one we've done before. You'll probably recognize it. I am going to give you a game. You must guess the year it was released. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to change it up slightly. Instead of that +10, -10 that would give me a headache last time. What we're going to do is, if you get it absolutely bang on the button, you will get 3 points. Mm-hmm. If you get it either side by 1 year, plus or minus 1 year, you can get 1 point. Okay? Everyone understand the rules?
I think I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So, Gerald, you're going to go first.
Okay.
The game is Agricola.
2006.
Ooh, not bad, Gerald. David?
2007.
Oh, sorry, I gave it away probably, didn't I?
No. I know it's 2007.
Okay. I'll be completely mute from now on. Or I'll give you.
You know because you're looking at BGG right now.
No, I know because I remember games that hurt me so deeply. What years they made.
It's interesting. Maybe we'll talk about Agricola later. Maybe.
Oh,
it's an interesting one. It's interesting. You mentioned that now. Little spoiler there. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, who won? Ben? I assume I did.
Oh, it's 2007. Sorry, 2007.
Okay.
Good. I knew.
Sorry. So 1 point. 1 point to Gerald. 3 points to David.
I'm going to prove it by getting the next one correct.
David.
No, you're looking at BGG.
You're first.
Not looking at BGG. I'm going to keep my hands up.
I actually had a frantic moment today because I went to do this game and BGG was down.
Oh my goodness!
So I had to go and figure it out.
You had to actually work
David.
today.
Yeah.
Actually had to teach.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. David.
Okay. Yes.
Your choice. The game is Splendor.
Oh no. 2014.
Oh,
Gerald.
2013.
Oh, it is 2014.
Proved it.
Well done, David. That's a little bit scary.
What is that about?
Gerald.
It's because. Okay, never mind.
No, tell us your.
Tell us what is it?
Strange.
It's because I remember the first time I played.
I remember when board games come out. Oh, that makes sense.
I remember to type in BGG. No, the first time I played Splendor was with you guys, and I suppose that was nowhere near 2000. I don't know. This story is irrelevant. For some reason I know it's 2014. I don't know. I just remember things.
So I know things. I know that the professional liars do say try and keep as much truth in the lie as possible. To carry
what I like to do is tell boring stories so you forget what the original point was, and then you
Gerald,
you forget that I lied. I didn't.
Ben,
King of Tokyo.
Easy.
Wait, 2011.
Oh, I
David?
know this. 2012.
It is 2011. Well done, Gerald.
Damn it! I didn't know that.
Here we go. Oh, this is
Thank
an easy
you.
one. Easy one. David, you're first. Terra Mystica.
Oh.
I don't know how old that game is. 2009.
That's the question. Gerald.
2007.
Bomb.
Oh dear, gentlemen. 2012.
But it's such a classic Euro.
That's the first time I played that game was with you as well, Jerry, and I didn't know the year of that one. Interesting.
Oh. Cool.
Who else do you play games with, David? Every single game on this list is going to be Gerald, I played this game with you as well.
I do play games with other people sometimes, but they don't like me unless Gerald's there.
Gerald, Viticulture.
Hello. Viticulture came out in 2016.
David?
2012, I think.
Oh, both wrong again. 2014.
Ouch.
Oh. David. Parks.
2018.
Gerald?
2019?
Well done, Gerald. Bang on the button.
God damn it.
That's a nice, easy one.
Yes, easy.
Excellent.
Gerald.
Yes.
Race for the Galaxy.
2009.
Okay. And David?
2008.
Oh, it's 2007.
Oh. So is it? Am I right saying it was Race for the Galaxy, then Roll for the Galaxy? Is that
yes.
how that happened?
Yes, but you don't get points for that.
Has there ever been a dice game that came before
the card game?
A card or full game?
Probably.
It's always been that. It's always been the game and then there's the dice game, isn't it?
Traditionally.
Okay.
Boring
a mystery
question.
for the ages. Next is David. The game is Kalis.
Kalis is quite old, isn't it? Or is it? Isn't it? 2008?
Okay.
I might be way off there.
2002?
Dear Gerald, I bought this for you. That means you haven't even read it, have you? You haven't even looked at the book.
I haven't. No.
2005. Oh, that's hurting.
Not that far off.
That hit me right
2005. Look at this artwork. Just look how old the artwork is. Does that scream 2005 to you?
It's screaming something.
We had computers and mobile phones in 2005.
We had iPods.
Bloody hell.
Gerald.
Yes.
Next game is two left.
God,
next game is Love Letter.
Love Letter came out in 2007.
Okay. And David?
2012.
Oh, David, bang on the button there.
What?
Sorry, Gerald. I took advantage of the situation. You were reeling from your Kalis experience.
I was.
All over
sorry.
the place.
I never played Love Letter. Just a little side there. Never played it.
What?
Yeah.
How have you never played that game?
Oh, no, sorry. I misspoke. What I meant to say is I've never received a love letter.
Oh.
Okay, Dave.
Funny and sad.
You got to work on those, man. Don't, no more off the cuff stuff, okay?
What are you talking about? I've got that written down. I've had that written down for about 6 months.
Ever since we started the podcast. God, when am I going to get a little love letter pun in?
Somebody, every week I'm on Tenterhook. Somebody mentioned love letter.
Have you never played Love Letter?
No, I seriously have never played it.
Wow. Oh, that's a great game, David.
Yeah, I think I'd like it, but I've never
had
the opportunity.
Okay, final question. I think it's pretty close. It's pretty close. David, you're first. The game is For Sale.
Oh man, this is old, but I don't know how old. That's the question.
This is a game. Board game.
2004.
Okay,
Oh,
Gerald.
I say old. That's not that old, but
That old.
in board game terms, that is quite old.
That's ancient in board game terms, isn't it?
Yeah.
2009.
No.
Gentlemen. For Sale was released in 1997.
Oh man, it's
Really?
much older than I knew. Ugh.
That's when you were born, isn't it?
So
David?
old.
Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, just the year before I was born. I wasn't confident in saying that early.
I
Even
remember
though-
watching that game when I first got into board gaming, and you would watch like Tom Vassal's top 10 lists, and he would mention stuff like For Sale, and it seemed really old then. Damn, that is so old. 97.
That is old.
Yet so fresh.
Yeah, and yet so relevant still.
So relevant, pertinent in board gaming. I love that game.
Final scores are in.
I assume I won,
It's in last place on 8
Dave.
points.
Dave.
It's Gerald.
You sure? You sure?
Yeah. I'll double check for you.
Okay, maybe.
Yeah, computer
Calculator?
says second place.
Okay.
Nice.
That's a lot of zeros in there, Gerald.
Okay.
First place on 12 points.
Oof.
David.
Thank
Well
you.
done, David.
Thank you very much. It
12.
was an absolute pleasure. Shall I
Good.
shall I play us out with the with Ben going on a quest?
Definitely.
Yeah, I like that. The music goes on a bit long, so
It's a shame that the picture doesn't do justice to how big Ben's arms are in real life.
I was going to stretch them by a factor of 200%.
You need to. He has a lot more
It
definition than that.
skewed
as well.
the entire picture.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a
have
lifetime
to
of reaching
yeah.
over the table.
Rolling those dice.
Don't lie. Well, you know, you sit there and say, pass me the dice, please.
In my hand, please.
Roll them for me,
Otherwise,
please.
how is it my turn? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. That was interesting.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Congratulations,
On to
Dave,
our
by the way. Sorry,
lists.
Thank you,
Well
congratulations.
done, David.
Yeah,
Well done.
congratulations.
Thanks. Thanks. Thanks.
On to our lists. So we've decided to be a bit salty this week for a change and go for games we shall never play again. Now, David does think there's going to be some serious crossover here. He's made hints. I don't think there will be, David. I think we're going to have an eclectic list. Yes, you've said it several times. Well, maybe in my head, but yeah.
In my dreams.
So,
Can I? Oh, are we okay? I've got a little. I did make a banner for this as well that I'm rather proud of.
Go
It's
for
a
it.
little bit. If it's just
If it's just me, it's going to be very awkward again. Okay.
No, it's not you. I haven't
Okay.
photoshopped any of us into it. I photoshopped the game into it. But this game isn't on my list. But I just thought Jerry would appreciate this.
Okay. That's
It's
good.
very nice.
It was very
Very
good.
nice.
It's clever. It's very clever. I like
Thank
that.
you. For anyone not watching, just listening, it's a picture of a man throwing Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
Is that the Blitzkrieg guy?
For copyright reasons, no. But yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I got you. I got the guy.
Yeah, it is. It's the Blitzkrieg cover altered. Wonderful art. Thanks for the artist for producing that for us.
Just so we can use it in this moment.
Yeah, Pandemic Legacy Season 1, but it's not in my list. But
Hey, don't jump the gun, David. Don't jump the gun. Let's establish what this is going to be. So now we have discussed this, and we have said that this is not necessarily our most hated games. I think David may have again misinterpreted the rule. There you go. Okay. So these are games. I would not consider these games the worst games ever made. I would not consider these games, garbage or trash. I got a whole different list for that. These are games that I will just simply never play again. Just
for what
to
reason?
the point where, if because they have a.
Oh, hold on! Isn't this part of like your list? Are you going to explain?
No.
Oh yeah, absolutely going to explain.
An emotional, or bad memories. So these are games that I would not. If they got them out and said, "I insist on playing this game," I'd say thanks very much. Grab my coat and off I go. I would not be playing these games.
I'd love to be at that evening. No,
I hope that's. Is there a different interpretation of what this list is going to be?
Well, perhaps.
Go on, Joey.
I was going to kind of explain, because there are games, obviously the games on my list, the games that I would, chances are I'm never going to play them again, but not necessarily because I particularly dislike the gameplay or anything like that, or like there's some weird emotional attachment to it. But I think it's just games that perhaps there might be older ones on my list that I think, and now they're a little outdated, and I found better versions of that type of game. That's kind of
okay.
perhaps.
See, I really thought about this, and I came up with a fair amount of games that I thought, oh, this could be on this list. But then I thought about them, like really thought about them, and I thought, do you know what? I probably would play those games again. So they didn't really belong on this list. For example, I'll just give a couple of examples. I thought like Cosmic Encounter, I didn't want to play. No, I'm giving an example. This leads into my list. I thought Cosmic
18 games.
Cosmic Encounter is an example, for example. I don't think I'd ever want to play that again, but I probably would play it again if somebody brought it to the table, because I know it's a good game. I've just not had great experiences with it. And like Keyflower, I haven't liked Keyflower, but I know there's a good game there. So I wanted to put those on, but then I thought it's not fair because I would play those again. So the games I've got on my list are games I consider to be absolutely abysmal and would never play again. These are games I hate. Like one of them, I'm genuinely annoyed it exists, and I'll go into that when we get there. But I absolutely hate that. I'm ready for this. I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Wow,
stupid.
Wow, that's strong.
You have to give a warning to parents. Take children out of the room now, if necessary.
Is there going to be swearing in this episode? Is there going to be swearing?
There probably will be some swearing.
Some colourful language. Bit of blue for
the episode.
Probably will make enemies.
Okay. All right, let's start with you then, Gerald.
Sure.
What is the first game on your list?
So the first game on my list, it's kind of already been mentioned this evening, but for that reason as well that I just mentioned a second ago, where it was one of those games when I first get into board gaming. It's one of those games that's considered one of the greats, and you kind of need to have a copy on your shelf. And I did used to play it a lot when I first had it. It was actually gifted to me, but I've shifted on the copy since. It's Agricola. So if you don't know the game of Agricola, which if you're listening to this podcast or any podcast about board gaming, you probably do know, it's all about building a farmstead by sowing seeds and raising livestock. And it says this in the tagline, very importantly, don't forget to eat. And this is testament to how tricky this game is, because even though it is, some people consider one of the purest forms of worker placement, and you're activating all these different spaces in a shared kind of village area to gain resources to obviously grow your farm and have animals and build stables for them. You need to, at the end of harvest, rather, feed your family, and it can be very, very brutal, as I'm sure Dave will testify to, where we've played a couple of games and it completely wrecks you if you are unable to feed your family. Mm-hmm. I think it's, do you know what? Thematically, I'm not too fussed, because I quite like dry themes like this. I like farming games. I've got no problem there. I think the components are beautiful. I really like the classic Euro feel of it with all the wooden pieces. And I think there are different versions out there, but I've got the one with the animeeples, and I think they look great on the board. The setup is a nightmare for this game. I really despise how long it takes to set up, where you've got to put all the cards out and obviously create all the places for the workers to go. All the resources are individual. I think it takes too lengthy a time. The rules are so heavy and awkward when you teach this game for the first time, especially, and it definitely takes a couple of games to get used to it. It's actually better to play an online version or an app version of it to actually have an understanding of the game. But because I don't think this is so typical of worker placements nowadays, but every single action space is really different on the board, and you have to know how everything works so that you can obviously get everything to work together so that you can build your farm effectively. It's so difficult to teach, even though it's like, when it comes down to it, rules aren't complex. The mechanics aren't complex. You know, you put your work down and you take whatever, but you have to know how it all works collaboratively for it to work. It's not so multiplayer solitaire like some worker placement can be, because it can get quite conflicty. But you know, as is typical of this sort of game, you can end up kind of just focusing on your board and have this kind of personal experience. It's not really a shared experience. But when someone does block you, again, it's really brutal, because it feels like one of those games where, regardless of you have these kind of extra worker cards that come out, but regardless of that, it always feels like you need to do certain things at the beginning of the game to succeed in Agricola. You need to have certain resources, and you need to start prepping for that first harvest. So everybody's kind of going for the same thing anyways. And if you don't do that, the game's extremely hard to do well in. At least you can survive, but it is very hard to score high if you don't do this kind of set things. I kind of mentioned this with Scythe last episode, that you're kind of, the gameplay's kind of set out for you for those first few rounds. There can be a lot of downtime as well where people are making those choices, and ultimately the reason I shifted this one is that I find it to be quite a stressful game. Where I first started playing, I was kind of getting to board games. It got to the point where it was like, oh my God, am I actually having fun with this? Or I think this is causing anxiety and stress when I'm playing it. Like, I'm so racked with nerves at the fact that I'm not going to be able to feed my family. And suddenly the fun's getting negated. And then if someone goes and blocks that fishing space, or I can't get food, it's like, oh my God, this is horrible. It feels horrible, this game. And so for those kind of reasons, it kind of got shifted or cycled out of my collection. It was great when I first got it, and when I was first into board gaming, and it was very fresh, and I didn't know what worker placements were, and it was one of the first worker placements I ever played. But there are definitely better worker placements out there now, which I would much rather play over Agricola. And for that reason, I would never play Agricola again. Even to say that, I've played the family edition, and it does what Agricola does, but it's a lot easier and it's quicker, and there's not so much stress. I'd rather play the family edition.
You've talked it up quite a bit, that one, haven't you?
Yeah, the family edition is pretty strong, but Agricola itself, the old school, hard pass. It's
like I think I've said it before, but it's like a second job, that game. It feels so much work.
It does feel like work. It feels like work when you're playing.
And there's so much punishment when you don't. I mean, as you said, I'm the worst at that. Forgetting to feed the family, and then you've got
had a couple negative
of
games in a
20
row.
Points at the end of the game. I loved it when I first played it. I loved it. I loved the theme. I loved the art. I loved the board and all the little meeples and stuff. I thought it was amazing when I first played it. In fact, the first couple of times I played it, I was like fell in love with it. But yeah, I had a couple of really bad games of it, and it just made me realize it's not a pleasurable game. It's a hard work. I mean, if you want that, fair enough. But
and again, kind of going back to Ben's point at the beginning, not to say that any of these games, particularly on my list, they're not bad games. Agricola does what it does, and it does it very well. But that's just not the kind of gaming we're into nowadays. I want a stress-free, enjoyable evening of gaming, and unfortunately, Agricola doesn't really provide that for me anymore. So yeah, my first pick is Agricola. Get out there. Don't want it again.
I do have a confession to make.
Go on.
This is the only game I've ever come across on Board Game Arena that has a tutorial in the game. I've never seen that before, and it popped up, and I closed that down so fast. I don't learn games by reading rules and doing tutorials. I learn them just by clicking buttons and see what happens. So I had 3 or 4 Agricola games on the go. No idea what's going on. There's a lot. There's a lot there.
Tough game.
Yes, it is a tough game. Thank you, Gerald.
Sorry.
Hey, David, what's your first one?
Okay, my first one. I've done this in order actually. Of worst to absolute. Yeah, just this first one then is a game that I got thinking, this could be fun. It's a bit different, clever idea. Dexterity elements mixed with a board game. Thought, hey, this could be really good, because I personally quite like the idea of dexterity games, but it's very rare that they work. But if you want to try a game that is so shockingly bad,
can I guess?
Yeah, go for it.
Is it Mega City Oceania?
It is Mega City Oceania.
I've never seen this.
Oh my God, I forgot about this.
So this is from a company called a publisher called Hub Games, and I quite like Hub Games because they produce some really phenomenal looking games in terms of components. They did a game they produced a Japanese game over here called Flip Over Frog, which is an absolutely lovely sort of kids game, family game really. And so I was quite excited because they're publisher wise, they do produce great games, and this is no exception. This is a game that's full of loads of plastic pieces, opaque and see, you've got the see-through glass and stuff. What you're doing then, let me just quickly, is you're building cities rather off the coast of Australia, And to do that, you are building up. I'll get some photos up. These kind of abstract-looking buildings, following some rules, and you get blueprints in the game, and you're told that you've got to build a building with like an overhang on it, or you've got to build like the tallest building and stuff like that. And so what you do is, in between turns, when it's not your turn, you're building. Then when it comes around to your turn, you are having to make a choice. Do you just keep building? Do you stop building and slowly move? And this is the thing that got me, where I thought sounded really cool. Once you finish building, you slowly move your hex into the middle of the table and make it join up with a city. And if it collapses, you haven't built it properly enough, and you have to take it back and start again. The problem is with this game, it just
this sounds amazing.
Yeah, right. It
On
does
paper,
sound amazing.
It sounds incredible.
And look at it. It looks stunning. And I've still got this actually, so hey, maybe it is stunning, but it's not. We tried it and we thought, like, let's give this a go. And I read the rules, and I think we all got this to the table with an open mind, thinking, hey, it looks nice, it looks fantastic. It just doesn't work, because on your turn you have to do something, but you don't. Because the turns are so quick, the turns are a choice. Like, do I keep building? Do I take a new card? Do I move my building into the city? And that's it. But it doesn't work, because the game flows so quickly that you get about a minute before it comes, or less, before it comes back around to your turn, and you're still building your buildings, because these are quite fiddly, as you can see. So the game just doesn't flow correctly, because it comes to your turn, you pause for a few seconds, you're like, no, I just want to keep building, and the rest of the game just disappears, because everyone's doing the same thing. So all you're doing is sitting around building these buildings according to what your contract says, but no one's involved with each other. It's like you're playing with Lego and there's no game going on, and then all of a sudden it stops and whose turn is it? Oh, I don't know, because we forgot turn order, because we're all just sitting there building. There's no game. So this is a game that's designed around a very clever idea that doesn't have any rules to hold that idea in place. And it's very bizarre. And I really thought, looking at it and hearing about like this, I'll see if I can find a picture. I don't know if there's any pictures of, here you go. And like sliding your building across into the city and not, and getting bonus points for certain rule placement, certain building placement. And I thought it was going to be great. It's not. It's shit.
It's a mess.
Basically.
That game is a mess.
It's terrible. It's got designer-wise. It's got a guy called Jordan Draper. I don't know if you're familiar with this guy. He does the Tokyo series of games. He's done some very, very sort of abstract and very popular games, like Metro X, I think, is one of his and stuff. Basically designed sort of games that are generally set in Japan, set in Tokyo and stuff.
Tokyo Highway?
No, I don't think. No, that was a Japanese game. This guy does. He does games where you like with really like abstract pieces. Like you'll get a box full of pieces, and there's about a dozen games in there. He's right. Like a very clever designer, and by all accounts, he's designed some really good games. So I was quite excited, thinking, "Oh, this could be really good." It's just not. It's just bad. It looks great. It sounds great. It just doesn't work, unfortunately. And yeah, that's why it's on my list. I just can't see any reason to play it, because there's no game there. It's just a load of plastic pieces. If you want to do this, just play with Lego, because that's actually fun.
Wow. Okay.
That's a good pick, man. I'd forgotten about that. I'd actually removed that from my memory.
Yeah, that's how bad it is. I completely understand it. Yeah.
Ben, what's your pick?
My number 3. So I haven't really got a particular order. Maybe they have. I don't know. Really. My number 3 is a game called Horrified. Wildly popular.
Yeah,
very popular.
Really, really didn't like it. And where it has bad memory for me, because I've tried to teach it a couple of times, it just falls so flat. And I don't, I'm decent at teaching games. I can teach Pandemic, I can get people excited about it and that sort of stuff. This game I've tried, it just doesn't. I have a real hard time getting across, because it seems to me so convoluted. There's the writing is so small on the. You have to put out these particular humans from the. You spend quite a bit of time reading each character to find out which one. Oh, okay, right. It's Miss Davis, right? So chuck her on, and where does she need to go? She needs to go there. And it was such a slow game, which is not compared to Pandemic, which is so quick. where all the game is in the decisions you have to make. The sort of upkeep of the game, super quick. Pull a card, put some cubes down. Right now, let's plan. Horrified was it was so fiddly. Oh, he goes here, he goes there, he goes there. I would never. If someone got this out, I said, yeah, I just don't want to. It just doesn't float my boat at all anymore. It just wasn't. I had such high hopes for it that it just is really not what I was expecting at all.
Is it a co-op game, Ben? Horrified?
It is a co-op game, yeah.
Okay.
It's like a co-op survival game, isn't it?
Hence the comparison to Pandemic, sorry.
Right, okay. So do you not play, is there not like Team where certain people play like the monsters and some people play like the victims thing, or?
No, it's program. You play famous monster hunters, I think.
Okay.
And then the monsters are going around the town killing the townspeople.
You don't even get to play the monsters.
No, and the townspeople are running around, obviously away from the monsters, and you have to get into the monsters' lairs with certain tools. So, for example, you have to get into the vampire Count Dracula's coffin room with 3 stakes.
Okay,
and then he's done, right?
Right.
But it was just, you have to go find the stakes, but then you have to do the program with the monsters. The monster moves here, and then the townspeople move here. And there was such a long time setting that, getting things going, that the actual decision process was minimal. It just, I genuinely do not understand how this game is popular. It's so maybe it is. I don't know. People do clearly like it. I will never play this game again.
I wonder if it's found
fun.
Go on, sorry. No, go on.
I was going to say, I think the theme has a lot to do with that, because there aren't like the idea of movie monster games, and there's not a lot out there. I know there was a lot of horror games, but movie monsters, there's few and far between, like really big movie monsters.
This is like the universal monsters, isn't it?
Is it like the Wolfman and Frankenstein?
I think that's what it's supposed to be. Like,
I think that's a big appeal to a lot of people, and that's quite an accessible theme for a lot of people. So perhaps that has a lot to do with it. But yes, it's interesting because the fact that it was co-op kind of put me off of it. But
I think it's also weirdly it's found a place with maybe like non-gamers as well. I was going to say families, but I hesitate at that because of the theme. But I think not like friends, having this game and then bringing it to the table with non-gamers, and it's got that accessibility, kind of like Pandemic has.
I'm always amazed.
This is a step up from Pandemic in complexity and fiddliness. But whereas in Pandemic, the game is the interaction with each other, right? Having you should go here, you should go there. This was not. It just wasn't. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a lot of heavy lifting for not a very much game. So don't know why people like it. There you go. I will prepare to be corrected, but there you go. I will never ever play that game again.
Nice.
All right, let's go. David, you can go next. What's your second game on your list?
Well, my second game is a game. I'm saying this as I'm typing because I thought Jerry was going next. It's a game.
Spoiler, not a game.
Incredibly popular game.
Right.
Incredibly popular. In fact, I don't think I've ever really seen anyone talk negatively about this game, which baffles me. Except for maybe Jerry when we played it. I think this is just one of the worst games I've ever played. Oh, let me just. This is a game where you roll dice to decide where things go on your board, and
that's kind of Burgundy, is it?
No, it's not. That game will never be on this list, I can assure you. This is a game called Space Base, which is so popular that I can't fathom it. I don't understand. People have called this like the step up.
Can we just pause a second here? Can you just pause a second here, David? Just scroll back up there.
What's that?
So it looks like you've ranked it as 7.
Me?
Yes.
Where?
Oh, on the stars there. My rating. 7
is that what it says?
10.
What?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did.
Sorry.
I did.
Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Sorry, I've taken.
No, I did.
Sorry.
No. Yeah. So let me get into this. I definitely did rank it as 7 because when I first got it, it was the hype was incredible. Like people were saying that this game is phenomenal, right? That it's this very simple game, and I read the rules and I thought the rules sounded amazing. Like they really did, because all the game is you've got these long player boards, which are your tablet. Here you go. So you've got these long player boards, which I've got 12 spaces, and you've got 2d6, and you roll the dice, and then you place wherever the dice show. So if you roll a 6 and a 1, you could place 2 ships in your space dock at space 6 and 1, or you could place 1 spaceship at space 7, which is the most common. And whenever you roll those dice, whatever spaces you choose to activate will activate an effect. So normally you'll just have, say, some coins. So you'll be getting coins, and coins mean you can buy the cards in the middle, or you'll get victory points, or you'll get to attack other players or something. I can't even remember, the game's boring. So basically, what you're doing is rolling dice and placing ships there. And that's it. That's all you're really doing. And I read the rules and thought, hey, this sounds quite cool. And the way videos talk about it sounds great. So I played it. Thought, yeah, it's actually quite good. It's quite clever. I've never played a game like this before. And for the first game of it, and I do tend to get quite passionate about games based on the first play. So I did rank it because I thought, yeah, it's good. It's fun. It's hyped up. It's living up to it. Then I played it again, and I just realized that was it. That's the whole game. There was nothing else to it. You're just rolling dice and placing cards and doing what those cards say. But I didn't feel like I had any like agency over the game. I really just felt like I was going through the motions, and that was it. There was nothing else. There was nothing else going on. And I played it. I didn't play it for a long time. Then I think I played it with you, Jerry, once. And then we went to UKGE and I sold it. Because when we played it, I think you had exactly the same feeling as I had after playing it a couple of times. There was just nothing going on there.
It was very much it was like kind of, and I know we say this about quite a few games, but it's one of those games that to me was just, it's okay. It's
entirely
nothing like special, but it's a very okay game. I thought it's pretty neat that you're rolling the dice. You've got this great economy where you're purchasing from a shared market in the middle. I like those choices you had there. You're obviously kind of limited with the luck of the roll and all that sort of thing, but the fact that you can utilize the dice, and whether you want to play them as separate or together, you could kind of
agreed.
even those odds out. But you are right. It just felt like, I don't know where. For me, it's kind of like an engine builder, isn't it? Where you stack those ships and you're able to unlock things further on in the market and stuff. Again, it was okay because there's better games out there that I'd rather play for that sort of stuff.
There's games with choices out there. That's the thing.
Okay.
This game just doesn't have many choices, and this feels like a game that could be fixed by an expansion by adding more stuff. But why?
I probably wouldn't say no to playing it again. If someone had it on the table, I'd probably be like, yeah, I'll give it a go. It's been a while since I played it, but
I've sold it now.
Oh, yeah. It's the only person I'd play it with, I guess.
Also, I just want to mention, because I really like, I'm quite passionate. Well, I think we all are, but all passionate about art and stuff in games. The way this game looks is quite, you can see it there, but it's quite bright and colourful, and that's great. But all the ships are just repeated over and over. It's just the same art, and I don't like that. I think this game could have been vastly improved just by having different art on, because at least when you're putting the cards down, you're like, oh, look at that. It's a different ship. Oh, I've got this ship. You haven't got this ship, that kind of thing. But instead, it's the only different ships are limited to ones you can buy in the middle, whereas all the other ships just look the same, just a different color art. And that only kind of goes to make the repetition of the game and the lack of variety more apparent. And so, yeah, I don't like it. I don't get the rating for it. I think it's pretty dull and clever idea. Just, again, like Mega City, clever idea just doesn't really work for me. I just didn't really see a game. It felt like half a design.
You played this one, Ben?
No, but I feel it's going to come up again in a little while.
I know what's coming up. Yeah. So, yeah, this is... Well, yeah, let's just leave it.
Nice.
I'll go second.
Sure.
Because mix things up a little bit.
Yeah.
So the next one on the list, this is probably the most difficult one, because it was, I think, the first board game Amber ever bought me.
Oh.
And it's got. I'm always the buyer. I find the games.
I'm the buyer.
I'm the buyer.
I'm the buyer.
I'm the dealer. And we had played and loved Stone Age a lot, right? She loves Stone Age, and she said, "Right, your birthday's coming up. You know, what do you want?" And I said, "Well, I did a little bit of research. This is a while ago, and it's a long time ago, actually. So I have had this game for a very long time. I did a bit of research, and then I went into the shop and I said, "Listen, I need something similar to Stone Age." and they said, "Oh, this is the current the business. It is the village." And so she bought me Village. Now, she also bought Modern Art at the same time.
Oh,
yeah. So
that's tough.
It's been saved.
Well, thank goodness for that.
Yeah. But Village. Now, I'm having a real hard time. I think finally we've said it's time to go, because every time we sit down, even Amber said it last time. Every time we sit down to play it, and I start explaining, I get halfway through the rules, and she's like, "What are we doing here? Why are we putting ourselves through this again?" And it's crazy to think in 2012 this was a Spiel des Jahres winner.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm thinking of? Immediately as I opened the pictures, I was like, "This looks great."
Yeah,
it looks lovely.
Village has always had the trappings of something that I would love. I think I love the dryness of it. I love the Euro look. It's something that
it has one novel little mechanism, which is as time goes by, your people die. So you start with level 1s, and then there's 2s and 3s and 4s. And so as time goes by, your first generation, the number 1s, they'll die, and so they go into the graveyard or the book or whatever. Okay. That's really the only hook. Otherwise, it's just a absolutely standard Euro game.
Okay.
Really,
and we play it. We play it like once a year. Someone will come, we'll play Stone Age, and they'll say, "Oh, what's the next step up?" And we haul this out, and then we go halfway through, and we just say, "Oh no, we've done it again." So I think we have said, that that's the last time we are not going to be playing that game again. And very difficult, because I think maybe it's the game I've had longest in my collection, possibly. Because it's Amber's. It's the first one she ever bought me, so it has a clear emotional. It's not a bad game, but
can you not sell it, or you're not going to sell it?
I probably will sell it now. It's time. It's time.
Okay, it's time. Put out to pasture.
We'll give it a little hug before it goes, and then see it off.
Okay, set it off to sale.
Yeah.
So if somebody bought this out, you were at a game night, you'd driven 2 hours to get to a game night, and they brought Village to table, would you leave? Would you just say, "I'm sorry, I'm out"?
Driven 2 hours. Where do I live? On the Orkney Isles. Driven down.
yeah. I'm just using it as a scenario to see how far you'd have to drive before you.
No, I wouldn't. I'd do something else.
Just sit. I'm just going to sit in the corner and watch.
Yeah,
It's
just a standard Euro with a time thing. I mean, in 2012, that was enough to get you an award. Honestly, it's madness to think that that's the case. We're 9 years later, and I would be. Yeah, I don't think this game is getting a reprint. There's no demand for a game like this.
Getting a reprint, buddy. A damning review.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Wow,
it's pretty nice.
Excuse me.
So yeah, that's my game number 2.
I've got to say I'm a little bit disappointed, because Village is still on my list of games that I would like to play.
It looks like a
game.
something
I'd enjoy. And for that,
do you know what, Gerald? Just for you two, I would play that game with you two, just so we can have a good laugh about it.
But does that have anything to do with the fact that it would take you about 12 hours to get here?
Yes.
So you think, man, I might as well. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No. Not great. Okay, Gerald.
Yes.
Your second game.
Number 2.
I'm excited.
This is a game that I think I wanted to love. It was a game that I was on the hype train for it, and it did have a very strong hype train. It's Root. So I don't think I would ever try to play Root again. And again, kind of reiterating the point, this isn't knocking the actual game itself. It's a phenomenal game. Many people have played it. Many people love it. It's a very popular game. It looks phenomenal. I love the look of it. I love the theme of it. And that's kind of one of the reasons, or a couple of the reasons rather, why I wanted to love it as well. Because, we're talking about like animals of, I was a big fan of the Redwall series and that sort of stuff, of like woodland critters going to war and things. So I loved the idea of this game. But when getting to the table, man, totally different ball game. I mean, Root is probably one of the hardest learns.
You should try teaching it.
I know, and I didn't even try to teach it. It's one of the hardest learns that I've been faced on the board game table, And I can't imagine, because Dave had to try and, well, you tried to teach this to our group and everything, and you know, it looked difficult, and there were so many questions and so many discrepancies. If you don't know, Root is as I've kind of said, you deciding the fate of this forest as woodland factions fighting for like contrasting goals, not necessarily the same goal, and it's based around these asymmetric factions of this woodland. So you have like the Katamaki and the Eerie, the Eagles, and this sort of thing, and they all play differently. So because of that, that's why the game is extremely difficult to teach. And because of the asymmetrical nature, you really need a dedicated group that wants to play Root a lot for it to actually work. I can imagine that everyone has to learn the different factions. You obviously have to learn the factions each first and play that a couple of times. And you have to understand how the other factions work to really get, I think, the experience that Root was trying to produce. And credit to people that do that, because I think, and I understand that when you do put the time in for this game, it's phenomenal. And it rightfully so, it deserves the praise that it gets. But it's so group dependent. And I don't think that it's just a game that's not for our group, where we would rather, as opposed to spending so much time learning the intricacies of an individual board game, we would rather try other things. I'm a big fan of games that are like low ceiling, high threshold. You can pick up in an evening, and you can gain the intricacies of the game, so you can play to a decent standard, even though it's the first time you're playing. So everyone's got a chance of winning, even though you've been playing against people that have played before. I love games like that, and Root is definitely not one of those games. Weirdly, and I know a lot of people say, you know, it's definitely not a board game. It's definitely a war game with like the look of a board game. But even beyond that, for me, it's kind of this weird board game where you spend so much time on social play, because you have to kind of pretend you're not a threat, and you've got to convince the table as you're playing, oh, I'm not the threat here, like the eagle guy's the threat, you should go after him. And you spend so much time going back and forth. And actually, I found the games that I played of Root, it's kind of just like mitigating your losses. It's like, oh, it's clear who's going to win because they're already halfway to the 30 victory points. So as like, it's negated any chance of me winning. I'm just going to try and jump on that guy and help him win. And that's the best I can get going. So as a result of that, go on, sorry, that just for that point, that exact situation is what happened to me, and that's what ruined the game for me. Right. And it's a weird war game for that sense, where it feels like someone can run away with it, and I just have to kind of jump on the bandwagon, and I've like relegated myself to my fate, victory, and it's like a cheap victory. Now I'm going to try and support this person to win, or you know, I want to make sure that person doesn't win or whatever. So if I was to say the few games that I did play were very much of like, oh well, good game, I guess, and that was kind of it. So it's definitely a game that needs some dedication to it, but that's dedication that I'm not willing to give it. Suffice to say, I doubt I would ever play Root again. That's my second pick. This very, very nearly made my list. There's the only reason it's not on my list is because of one person, and that person is Tom, who is so passionate about this game that he has convinced me that if he ever was to bring this to the table, I would give it another chance. Just because how much he loves it. That's the problem, right? It's like, he'll bring it to the table, we'll play it, and it will end like, oh, good game, because you can't just play it once. You need to play have to commit to it. Yeah, it's commit to it a few times to understand it. I think most of, I was going to say all, but I think most of later games are like that, because before this came out, I was really, really interested in what's the other their first game called? I can't remember. The one where you're basically, somebody plays as a cave while somebody plays as a knight venturing through the cave, and then somebody else plays as like goblins and stuff. I was really interested in that, but when I learned Vast, yes, thank you. When I learned that it takes about 3 hours to play, and you have to all learn an individual player set, I just wasn't interested. But then Root came out, or came to Kickstarter, and they were saying it's a 2-hour game maximum. It's much more streamlined, which is true. It probably is, but man, I actually have a lot to say about this game, which I won't say because I've written a review of this on Board Game Geek, which you can go and check out. It got a lot of response because I think I wrote.
Oh, I do remember this. I remember this.
You wrote this during the hype train as well.
I wrote, and I'm very proud of this. Although it's a very weird thing to be proud of, but I wrote the first negative review of Root. And it got so much. I mean, I'm not saying backlash because most people were fair, but it did get some backlash, but it got a lot of response. And then Shut Up and Sit Down came out with their negative review, which kind of said a lot of the points that I was trying to make. They just said it.
Of course. They must have read your review.
They probably no. I think they probably what they did is they read my review and went, "God, Jesus, that's all it takes to do a negative review." And then they did a good one with using the proper English language. But they said it really well, and they summed up my like the thoughts that I couldn't express properly. They said, it's worth watching their review, but it's probably worth reading my review as well. Do you read it? Yeah.
I remember in that review, in the responses, our group got slammed for being
a couple of. There's always a couple.
They
of
blamed
people.
our group. That's why we didn't like it.
I'm being very diplomatic here, but there's always a couple of people on the internet, aren't there? There's usually 2 or 3 people on the internet that like to poke. Well, it's not the game's fault. It's obviously your group. Your group's not smart enough. That's what we got told.
You're not smart enough. Thank you.
You're not smart enough to play this game.
That commenter had a point that it is very group dependent,
we are done,
and it is not a game for our group. So
it's that they would have had a point if they hadn't said maybe your group's just not intelligent. No, I don't think they did say that. I didn't even jump. I think they said something like that, and I didn't even. I thought okay, but I think somebody else kind of jumped. I don't know. You'd have to go back and read it. It was years ago, but shout out to Kyle Ferrin though, because without his artwork on those games, I don't think half the people would be interested. I mean, I'm a big fan of that guy.
The theme and the artwork is phenomenal, and I see it's interesting. Oh, go on, Ben. Go on.
So I'm having the same sort of thoughts about this as about Scythe, in that it's a specific type of game, but it looks like something else.
Tom brought it up, didn't he?
Either that collapses it. It can't. It falls through because everyone hates it. Everyone really likes it, and it is a war game. It's one of those. As soon as I've already played the digital version. I knew that David had just ripped into it, and I opened it up. I started playing. I was like, this is a war game. As soon as I started doing things, they said, "Oh, do this, do that," and it's just a this is a famous. There's famous, difficult, not realistic. It's like a war sim, I guess you would try and say. I instantly recognized it.
I've heard the online version or the digital version is actually worth playing before you play the board game. Because
I've heard
I can see that. Yeah.
It's almost. I think it's almost replaces the board game for a lot of people.
Well, yeah. I mean, because it negates that kind of the negative effect of having such a strong asymmetrical game where you're led through it, and it's broken down so much more the tutorial that it all makes sense and you can actually get into the game. But teaching it to a table, I mean, nah, man, that's too much. That's too much. I hear people are having similar problems with Oath right now.
Oh my god, Oath is apparently I think it's root,
like this on steroids, right?
yeah.
And it's like people are, and I see loads of memes online where people have like, has anyone actually played a full game of Oath yet? Because
has anyone figured this game out?
Yeah, has anyone figured it out?
Hey, credit to the designer, because when Root came out, I just thought, oh, maybe he's just trying too hard. Maybe he's just like, he's kind of showing off a bit. Like, I mean, he's obviously an intelligent guy, but then since then he's come out with other games, and I think he's kind of proven if he's the kind of designer you either get on board with his designs or you just don't play them. And I think
a bit Marmite there.
I mean, I got a lot of admiration for it, because at least he's trying something different, and he is definitely doing something different. I think that's great. But this is a game.
I think you shouldn't underestimate the idea that feeling when people do like the Times crossword, right? They get this immense feeling of satisfaction for being clever enough to do that crossword.
Sure, maybe
that might come into it as well. If you are clever enough to play these games, it's a little badge of honor. So I'm not. Fine.
I think you're doing yourself a disservice though, because you are clever enough to play these. It's just a game where do you want to? I think that's what it came down to for us. So it's it wasn't that we didn't understand the game necessarily. It was more just like we understood that the commitment this game would take is gonna. Why bother when there's other games out there that we also want to play? That's what it was for me.
Exactly.
But
it's a weird game in the modern market where a game gets played maybe 3 or 4 times before it's in permanently or it's gone. It's an odd one to have because you do need to play that game several times.
Yeah.
So how it's got its traction.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
There you go.
What are we? Was that game 2 for everyone?
That was game 2, yeah.
So. Okay.
Yep.
Game 1. Who? Gerald, you go. I'll go first. Okay, fine. I'll go first.
You go, Ben. Go on.
Okay. My number 1 game has honorable mention, Scythe, but it would be too easy to do that one. So we have kind of skirted around it, but the number 1 game, if anyone flopped this out on the table and said, let's get this, I would instantly have done good night.
Interesting choice.
Thank you. Good use of flop. Thank you for that.
Oh, you don't flop yours out the table?
Of course they do.
Okay.
There's no other way.
The game is Machikoro.
Oh yeah, I should have known. I should have just
Of course not.
Very similar. It has, for two reasons, and I often think about this because it was the first really bad reaction I've ever seen anyone have to a board game, and it was obviously it was Amber, right? She lost her mind over the game. Hated it, and I often think about the game. You know, what about it was so rage-inducing that she just lost her mind to it. And then you read about it. This game was often talked about as being a replacement for Catan. As far as I could, you roll dice and maybe get some stuff. Yeah. Back when they said, when this came out, this was the Catan killer. But it has a fundamental difference in that in Catan, you roll your dice and then you get stuff. And if you're unlucky, you might not get some stuff, but you still have a chance. You can trade things, you know. And even as the later editions came out, they mitigated that with gold coins, and that's Machikoro. If you just have a certain set of cards, there's a very good chance that when the dice come to you, there's nothing you can do, because as people have rolled their dice, you've lost cards, lost money, lost this, lost that. Take this, take that. You just lost everything. You roll the dice, you could lose it all again. It was such a, I don't know what this. It was just so unfair. It's not. I don't understand why people liked it so much. There's not. You weren't really doing anything. Much like they say, Space Base is the replacement for Machikoro. The most you were doing was rolling a dice, and then I guess I'll buy that card. And then it sits in there. But a couple of bad rolls, you're not doing anything, and you've given all your money away. You've lost all it. It's gone. And so it was as soon as they said about Space Base, it's very much like Machikoro. I was like, oh, that's that off the list. I'm out. Touching that. It was these games are, and I played it several times, and it never made me happy. I never felt it was like a good game. I played it because I thought I must be missing something because everyone was losing their minds over it. Honestly, cannot tell you why people like it so much. Honestly, I have no idea. That's
an interesting point you've made there, Ben. Like, because ultimately, this is what it all comes down to: is actually, do these games make us happy? And I can actually say that the ones we're discussing, they just don't make you happy. No, because that's the real reason why we want to just play these games, is to feel some semblance of joy in our mediocre, dull lives.
Sometimes they're even worse, and they make you angry.
You know what? You know Monopoly.
Yeah,
that is not a fun game unless you are winning, right? If you're the one who's winning. Yeah. I guess you're having fun if you get fun out of crushing your opponents into dust. Yeah, fair enough. Machikoro very much like that. Okay. The only person having fun at that game is the person who's winning. Everyone else is just miserable. So if someone, I don't care how far I drive, I fly halfway around the world. If they put up Machikoro, say, no, thank you.
Coats being grabbed, I'm out being closed.
David, what's your number one?
I can say quite safely, I think, that this is possibly the worst game I've ever played in my life. To the point that it made me angry. For a good reason, for reasons that I'll get into in a second. So you know that I like small box games very much. Also board games.
Yes.
And part of the reason I love small box games is because they are very portable games that quite often offer more than you would know from, like Deep Sea Adventure, for example, tiny box, but you play it and it's a huge experience. You remember it for the rest of the night because it's very funny and it offers a lot of fun. There's a series of games which sell themselves on being small, tiny even, and they claim that they also offer an epic experience. Because what they do is basically they shrink everything. So they kind of instantly miss the point of what a small box game is, because all they're really doing is just going, here's a massive game, but we'll just shrink it. But we won't just shrink it, we'll shrink everything. So smaller cards, smaller meeples, smaller dice, smaller boards, blah, blah, blah. I completely misses the point of being small box games. So they sell themselves on this gimmick. So my choice out of all of those games is this one, which is a Tiny Epic Mechs, which I actually kickstarted because I was really excited about this. I thought, do you know what? I played Tiny Epic Quest, and despite my complaints about Tiny Epic Quest is quite unique, and I'll get onto that in a minute because it's the only one I think, and it's clever because it's it's gimmicky and it's pretty crap really, but when you've got a good game underneath it and the art is beautiful, and I was fully sold on the components, you're slotting the weapons into the meeples and stuff, great. I was quite impressed with it, and I thought, hey, do you know what, it's good enough, maybe their next game will be really good, maybe it'll be something a bit special, because every time they release a game they add something new. They add, in this case, I'll see if I can find some pictures, they add these mechs which you slot your meeples into, and I thought that's quite cool. I hope the game's good. It's not, unfortunately. What this game is what I consider most, not all, but most Tiny Epic games to be. It's a complete rip-off of other better games, and this one copies, and I'm not using that term loosely, it copies mechs versus minions, because it's programmable mech movement, which is exactly what mechs versus minions is. And it's also very much inspired by Adrenaline, because you're collecting these power-up weapons, which you're physically slotting onto your meeples, which I'll grant you is cool. But this is pure... this is a game which, without previous games like it, just simply wouldn't exist, because it takes so much from them that it basically is those games condensed down to a smaller, cheaper, more rubbish version. And it really annoyed me, because when I played it, I was thinking, is this all it takes now to make money on Kickstarter, is to just design these games which are based
this is it
which are based on other games that have come before it. And I'm deeply annoyed by the Tiny Epic series now, because this is what they do. Tiny Epic Galaxies and Tiny Epic Quest, for example, I feel I can't really think of what games they're taking off. I can see Tiny Epic Galaxies definitely inspired by other games. I mean, sci-fi is hardly original in board games, and Tiny Epic Quest, fantasy is not original in board games, but they're both quite unique in terms of what they do combined. The mechanisms all seem to work together, but they're mechanisms taken from all over the place, so it's hard to find what inspired them. When you look at games now, Tiny Epic games, Tiny Epic Mechs is very easy. If you've played those games, you can see Adrenaline completely, Mechs versus Minions very much so, and then you've got the new ones coming out, Tiny Epic Pirates. On the very first episode, I talked about one of my favorite pick up and deliver games, Black Fleet. In Tiny Epic Pirates, they've made the big selling point is they've got ships that cubes slot into, which are your goods.
Oh, I remember you saying the photos.
Black Fleet. And it's not only, not only that, it's also
angry on that message.
It's got separate merchant ships, which are different colors. Black Fleet. It's got your pirate ship. You've got your merchant ship. You've got your trader ship. It's all Black Fleet. Everything about that game is inspired by other games, but that gimmick that draws people in, they're like, oh, that's cool. I really want to back that because I want these ships. It already exists. And then you've got, what's the other one? Tiny Epic Dinosaurs. Played a game called Dinosaur Island. My God, look at Tiny Epic Dinosaurs and tell me it's not Dinosaur Island just redone. Because these Tiny Epic games are getting away with stealing from other games. Well, hang on, that's a bit of a strong term. They're not stealing, but they're getting away with being heavily. I'll rephrase it. They're getting away with being heavily and very obviously inspired by other games, and it's quite lazy, in my opinion. Because I'm not saying, the designer Scott Holmes as a designer, he's proven that he's a good designer. He's done, like, for example, Land, Air, and what's it called? Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea apparently is phenomenal. He's done Claim, which is a trick-taking game for 2 players. That's meant to be really, really good. He's done games. He's proven that he's a good designer. Like Tiny Epic Quest, like I say, is good. Tiny Epic Galaxies is considered a bit of a classic. It's just a shame that these games now, they seem to be more about selling on Kickstarter than anything else. And they seem to be going for a very tried and tested formula. It's just a shame that they're going for a tried and tested formula that's been done by other people. I just don't like that. And
so which game you say you're never going to play? You'll never ever play a Tiny Epic game?
No, I'll never play Tiny Epic Mechs because that's the one I played and hated.
Mechs, okay.
I would never really. I'd probably try them and give them the benefit of the doubt. But I have very strong opinions about the Tiny Epic series of games.
If anyone would like a breakdown of Adrenaline, David does have a 45-minute rule explanation on episode 2 or 3. I can't remember which one it was.
Very early on. Very early on.
Adrenaline. I'm quite passionate about Adrenaline as well. I'm quite passionate about everything, but I'm quite passionate about Adrenaline because that's one of my favorite games. It's like a top 10 for me. And this game, this game just steals from it. How dare it steal from one of my favorite games? Tiny Epic Mechs. It's just awful, man. It's just awful.
My massive problem with this game, because I agree with you, I think it's a trash game. And the reason for me, I remember playing it, and obviously, I'm sure you can guess if you haven't played it, that the premise of the game is that you are mechs and you're gaining weapons, and very much like Adrenaline, you're in an arena of death, where you're trying to decimate and destroy your opponent's mechs, but you can win the game without fighting. And I remember that being a distinct part of the game where it had something to do with drones or something, or where you're standing on certain tiles, you can score victory points and you don't have to fight. And it was so thematically broken for me at that point. And I think the first game we played, one of the other players did this very thing, and they didn't have to engage in combat to win the game. Well, that's utter crap. In a game about combat, when you're fighting death robots,
in a game where 90% of the game is collecting weapons and upgrading,
playing viticulture without making wine. Oh, please, who like?
We know someone
who you are out there. You know who you are out there, people. We know who you are. I hate that. I hate how thematically broken that could be. But I agree with you. I actively dislike the gimmicks of Tiny Epics. My particular hatred is when people start posting, oh, look, it's a little meeple with it's got a chainsaw in Tiny Epic Zombies. Oh, I've definitely got to get that because it's so cute and stuff. Oh, look at this one. It's a little meeple and he's like riding a motorbike. And I've definitely got to get that now. Oh my gosh.
That's their selling point,
over substance. It's garbage.
It is style. Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. But also take away those gimmicks and the games already exist in better.
They do. And there are much better versions of it. That's where I think, for me, Galaxies is the big exception for me, because that wasn't, there aren't gimmicky meeples in that. You had those lovely wooden rocket ships, and it was a nice dice rolling game, and it felt unique to me. And it's a very, very strong travel game if you're looking for a larger, not physically, but a longer small box game. I think Galaxies is a wonderful game.
Well, that's to my point. So this seems like they failed, right?
They lost it.
These games you could fit like 12 of these games in a bag where only 2 big games would fit, but they're not small games.
That's their attraction, isn't it?
It is their attraction, but they're not. But what are they offering? They're still big games. They've still got loads of components. They've still got loads of stuff going on. They're not just games. You take those to a campsite.
Big game in a small box.
Yeah, but take those small box games traveling with you, which is kind of the appeal of small box games in a way, right? Take those traveling with you, and then struggle with all those little fiddly pieces on a campsite or something. You're gonna have a nightmare. They're not designed for that. So I can't really figure out.
That's a really valid point, because if you haven't played the Tiny Epic games, there's so many fiddly components. A lot of small box games, if you consider especially like card games or those dice games, they're very basic in the components that come with the box. And you look at Oink games, for example. I know they like to go quite heavy on the cardboard sometimes, but there's for example, in Tiny Epic Quest, you have that kind of weapons rack, where it's a little cardboard weapons rack with all these individual meeple-sized weapons. Fuck, bringing that on a beach. What are you talking about?
And also, and all of your tokens are, this small.
Yeah, no way.
So it's not like streamlined games. These are big games made tiny, which makes them very, very fiddly.
And they're not made for traveling very well. You definitely wouldn't want to bring that to a campsite, Ben.
Yeah, I'm a bit hypocritical because I liked, like I say, I thought Tiny Epic Quest was quite original, but I don't know. It just seems as they've gone on. I don't know. It is a bit hypocritical, but I do like that game. I don't love it, but I do like it. But these guys, they've just got worse as they go on, and they just become money. Style over substance, as you say.
All right, we're on the 1 hour 15 mark here. So I dread to ask, Gerald.
It's not a Tiny Epic game. It's very in a similar vein to Agricola. It was one of the first games I ever owned.
Oh no!
When I first played it, I really enjoyed it, and it actually helped me realize that actually there are certain games that I just actively dislike. And for me, this is kind of the king of those games. It's Pandemic. I dislike Pandemic. I don't enjoy it at all. So here's my reasons why. And this is kind of games of this variety. mostly co-op games. I'm not a big fan of co-op games, mostly because, and especially in Pandemic's case, you have this group think. I hate games where there's group think, because when you have this open knowledge on the board and you have to obviously come up with a game plan, and there's inevitably going to be one person who's probably played the game more, and there's probably some other people who haven't played the game as much, and they end up just like being led in what to do. Generally in Pandemic, when you're faced with those particular cards in the scenario each time, like you draw the new card, there's a kind of a set thing you have to do, and it takes that person who's played the game before to just direct everyone. And so you can quite easily go into autopilot and you just say, oh, what should I do? And then someone will say, you should do this, and you go, okay, I'll do that. I don't think it allows very well for, especially for beginners of the game, like this ability for independent thinking, decision making. I really don't like that in a game, because I want everybody to do their own thing, and Pandemic does not lend well to that. I dislike that. I think the themes are uninspiring. I don't know what a real viral research scientist must do during an epidemic, but I'm sure it's not collecting cards and moving cubes around, right? At no point, regardless of the role that I've been given in Pandemic, and it has like, these military operators and scientists and admin. I don't know what the roles are in Pandemic, I've forgotten. But at no point do I feel like I'm doing that, because I'm pretty much doing what everyone else is doing. I'm picking up cards and moving cubes, and I may be able to like move a cube a bit further, but it doesn't bring the theme to life, just like giving names on these cards and having all these different roles. You talk about the replayability of this game. Again, when I first had it, I did play it a few times in a row, and I was kind of getting into it. I was like, am I enjoying this? I don't know. Anyways, I did play it a few times in just one afternoon. I mean, when I first get the game, I'd play it over and over again, because it was like a quiz, because you have to try and beat the game. That's something I don't like in board games. I don't like having to beat a game, because I'd rather play a computer game if that's the case. I want to interact with my opponents and combat real life people and stuff. I'm not interested in like that cooperative beat the board kind of gameplay. That's just a personal preference of mine, though. I've yet to find a co-op, a pure co-op that I actually enjoy. I don't think those are the board games for me. And really? Pandemic's like, obviously a massive cooperative game. It's just, for me, it's just the same thing over and over again. I think it's quite a hard game as well, because you're relying on this deck, and if those epidemic cards keep coming out and you just keep smashing you're like, okay, like there's another hour and a half I've wasted. Like it's not a quick game either. You have to dedicate a lot of time. Whereas if I were forced, if someone like put a gun to my head and like, you're going to play a co-op game and we're going to do this together and you're going to have a good time, I'd rather play something like Forbidden Desert, which I'm not a big fan of. I don't particularly enjoy it, but at least it's over quickly. And if you get beaten by the game, oh great, I'm playing against a board, you get beaten, and then at least you haven't wasted so much time, when actually I could have been playing.
I think there'd be a moment. I think there'd be a moment there where I'd be saying, Bullet or Pandemic?
Gerald, can I ask you, has David suggested several co-op games in the recent months or whatever just gone past? Because when you said, I don't like co-op games, he had the exact same face when you said, I don't like two-player games.
No, do you know what it was?
We don't play co-op games. We don't play co-op games.
I don't play co-op games generally, but I was thinking it's because I played Ghost Stories recently, and that's probably the.
I know you love Ghost Stories.
And, it's a top 10 game for me.
That's it, right? And for people who like co-op games, great. And I love the theme of Ghost Stories, but I don't like games like that. I don't feel any joy in. Oh,
no, that's fair enough. Like, yeah, I get that.
Cool.
I get that completely.
But
I'm not a big co-op player either.
Yeah.
There's a couple of games, that and Mechs vs Minions, I think, the two games that I absolutely love that are co-ops.
And I started thinking about it because
the lady doth protest too much. No, Jonathan, I don't like co-op games.
No.
I started my board gaming with co-op games. Zombicide was like the first board game I played properly.
So all these games I started thinking of when I started creating this list, actually the common theme was that there were co-op games, and I realized, and I knew a long time ago I didn't like co-op games, but like Zombicide, not interested in playing it again, never again.
Yeah.
But Pandemic to me is just like the big co-op game that I wouldn't play again, because I did think about Mechs vs Minions, and that's actually the only co-op game I would potentially be interested in trying. It is the unfortunate thing that I'm not that big a programming. I'm not that into either. Like
neither am I. That's the only game that does it well, in my opinion.
But the problem with that is that the one game I played, and you guys had all played it before, and I joined in on a game, and it was like the sixth scenario, and I got smashed, and it was a terrible game.
It was terrible. We all agreed it was a terrible game. Yeah.
And like that was my first experience of it. So to base it purely on that experience would be unfair for Mechs vs Minions, because just for the production alone, I would like to try that game again. So I'm willing to give that cooperative game a go again. But yeah, for me,
well, that's the same with my Pandemic experience. And I played Pandemic Cthulhu first, and it was such a terrible teach and general experience. And it wasn't just the person teaching it. It wasn't necessarily their fault. We were playing it in a very busy game shop, so it was hard it was going to be difficult for any game to make it to the table and be like, work really well. But you'd expect a game like, because I've played Pandemic Legacy since, but I hated it. That first game, I just like, what's the point? Everything was, because it was like you were talking about how people lead in games, and it was literally this guy, he taught half the game basically, and then he was going, here and do that, go here and do that.
That's the issue, isn't it? That's the issue. When I teach this game, I sit back and say, I am not helping you figure it out, and I'll take my turn.
But then it's not cooperative.
What do you think I should do?
Why are you playing cooperative if you're going to do that?
Instead of, I'm not going to do the quarterbacking, I say, right, they'll say, what should we do? And I say, I don't know. And when it comes to my turn, I say, well, what do you think I should do? Go here, maybe.
But that's not cooperative.
Right? That is not cooperative then. That's not team play. One person's actively not involving in the discussion.
Not being not quarterbacking the whole game.
But then
I see your point. Right? I see your point, but you're going the exact opposite direction. Therefore, you're not only not quarterbacking, you're not even cooperating.
It's puzzle
like,
for them.
Ben, what should I do?
I'm there to streamline the game. Make sure
how do we solve this world pandemic? Well, I don't care. But I'm only a librarian.
I'm there to make sure the game works, that the rules are adhered to, any questions, and I'll take my turn. I'll say, maybe I should do this, or here are my options. I could do A, B, or C. What do you think?
Yeah,
so I specifically do not quarterback that game, and everyone comes out thinking, yeah, it's all right.
Why didn't that guy help us?
And then we learn the rules, and then we get into it.
So by association, I'm very disinterested in playing like other versions of Pandemic. Like Dave said, we have played Pandemic Legacy, like season 1. Equally as dreadful experience. I was just,
good lord,
totally. The awkward thing about that is like, now I'm stuck in this legacy thing. It's like, oh god, I want to get out of this. Like, how are we going to get out of this thing? And it's just, was such a drag. And we talk about this happiness of gameplay. I'm just not garnering that, because it's always coming to that. Yeah, that group think's a big issue for me with this sort of thing. And unfortunately for me, that's just not something I'm interested in my board gaming. So
I think if we hadn't been playing it with good friends, I don't think we would have carried on. I think the fact that we were playing it with good friends is what it was the only joy I got from Pandemic Legacy was the fact that the people I was playing with and we were doing like role playing the characters we were. That was the only joy I got out of it.
Otherwise, it was just some like substance and life from this. Such an abstract game. I was like, come on, let's give it some life. Let's give it some characterization.
Move these cubes there. Oh, is it going to carry on next month? No, next month we just reset and start again.
Are there any games you boys do not role play?
No.
we
role play Corridor.
Role play Burgundy. Panamax up there. Role play it. Yeah.
Generally, I think we're role playing all the board games.
There's nothing a cowboy accent can't fix except Pandemic.
Yeah, even Pandemic.
Can't
Pandemic. That's a tough one. I do like. I find much like Dominion. I would use Dominion to teach deck building. I do use Pandemic as a new experience, because you never know, right?
Yep.
Some people might really like the co-op thing.
And that's why it was for me. It was on those very early games. It was part of that list. What's my worker placement? It's got to be Agricola. That's like top of the list. What's my co-op kind of game? Well, Pandemic's such a big name.
It's surprising you're still around playing board games after that. I need a dice rolling game. Yeah, Machikoro. Yeah, get that.
Yeah, Machikoro. Let's get it involved. But no, I
watched a terribly boring documentary in which they talked about Pandemic, and you
should definitely tell us about it then.
Yeah, no, it's relevant. The designer of Pandemic was going to they hold world championships for it, don't they? And he was going to one of those where like people just gather around and they just all playing Pandemic, and it's like, it's the group that can, they get, I don't know, they win the game first and then they go up in the ranks. Jesus Christ.
Thank you so much for bringing that to the table, David.
Terrible documentary.
What a brilliant way to end that.
I wouldn't advise playing the game or watching a documentary about the game.
Fantastic.
That's it. That's me.
Right. So We got to 1 hour 24. It's a long one,
Isn't it? Isn't it apt
big
that
one.
we're ending the episode about things we dislike and we're talking about a pandemic? I think it's appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, David. Again, thank you, David.
Always on point. Always on point with my
So
remarks.
topical, so relevant.
Right. David, if people would like to shout at us for our terrible choices, where can they find us?
You can find us on Instagram at back.of.the.shelf, on Board Game Geek, guild number 3879, Back of the Shelf Podcast. On Facebook, we also have a page, Back of the Shelf Podcast. And you can email us, backoftheshelfpodcast@gmail.com. And you can also support us, if you'd like, at coffee.com, Back of the Shelf Podcast.
The old email is picking up, isn't it? But our second person email us.
Yeah, we need to do some shout outs. Actually, can we do some shout outs? I'd like to do a couple of shout outs because we haven't done those in a while. I'd like to first shout out Ash for supporting the show, and which is very nice of her, and it's very much appreciated. Thanks, Ash. And also to Alistair for sending emails, and he's in touch quite a lot, and it's nice because we have it's nice to get the moral support and know that at least somebody out there is listening. Although I'm really hoping that Alistair isn't a massive fan of Tiny Epic or Pandemic, because I think we've utterly slammed those tonight. And if you are, Alistair, I'm sorry, but they're shit. But thanks for listening, Alistair. In all seriousness, really, I do appreciate it. It's really nice to be in contact with you. And Ash, thanks again for the very kind donation.
Thanks very much, David. Okay, so without anything else to add, I think it's time we called this one up. Say goodbye, Gerald.
Bye-bye.
Say goodbye, David.
Adios.
And it's goodbye from me.
Ooh.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.